Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kendra Scott Well Institute Women's Summit. We are so excited to be here with you. I'm Liz Matthews, and I am the Senior Vice President of Brand and Experiential and Advertising at Dell Technologies. And I couldn't be more honored to be here today to share the most amazing panel and some of the most inspiring entrepreneurs you're going to hear of today. So we are going to talk about the secrets to a successful brand and the passion and the people behind it. What makes a brand truly thrive? And I am really, really honored to introduce our three amazing entrepreneurs. And you're going to get to know them and you're going to learn their secret sauce around what's keeping their companies at the forefront of this conversation. So I'm going to introduce them and then we're going to jump into their stories. So first, I'd love to introduce Abigail Cook-Stone. She's the CEO and co-founder of Otherland Candles. Just amazing, beautiful experiential candles. Tiffany Taylor, who's the CEO and founder of Tiff's Treats. And I am sure there isn't anyone on the line that hasn't had a Tiff's Treat. And I'm really, really honored to introduce Janice Omedeki, who is the CEO and founder of the Mentor Method, such an inspiring company. So welcome, welcome all of our panelists. It's awesome to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get started. So when we talk about entrepreneurship and we talk about building businesses, we often talk about the importance of passion. I mean, all of you have shared that with us. And when you have a passion for what you do, no matter what it is, it shows. So I really want to go around this panel and talk to each entrepreneur and find out, you know, how did you harness your passion to build your company? So Tiffany, let's go ahead and start with you. You started Tiff's Treats while you were at UT, so we got to give everyone a big hook 'em. And I think you were taking orders over a cell phone. So, you know, tell us your story and what was your passion to make you create Tiff's Treats?
Yeah, well, I have an interesting story. So when we started, we were sophomores, me and my husband, we were the co-founders. We were not husband and wife then, boyfriend and girlfriend though. And we were sophomores at UT and I stood him up on a date. So I came over to his house to apologize. My mom told me that was rude. You should do something to apologize. So I used to bake cookies for fun. It was just a hobby. I don't know if I would call it a passion, but it was a hobby that I was kind of known for throughout high school. So I baked him this set of chocolate chip cookies and I drove him over to his house and I get there and all's good. And then when I get back to my house, he calls me up and the cookies just so happened to still be warm by the time I brought them over to him. And he called me up and he said, you know what, we should do this as a business. We can do exactly like pizza delivery, but with cookies. And we'll do bake from scratch, warm, fresh cookie delivery to all the students at UT. So I immediately said, no, I do not want to do that. Not interested at all. I was in the middle, I was only a sophomore. So I was just in the middle of just being a college student. That's really all I wanted to do. But he's a very persistent person. And he and I disagree about this point. He says that he would have just let it go and that he was like, oh, okay, no, that's not the way I remember it. I remember that he was like, no, we have to do this. This is why. It's going to be easy. It's going to be fun. We're going to make tons of money. None of those things happened, by the way. Those were all completely false. But he was pretty persistent. And so I started thinking about it a little bit and thought, well, it does sound fun. If nothing else, it does sound like a little bit of fun. So then I spent the rest of the day just kind of pricing out how much do even ingredients cost? How could we package it? What other flavors besides chocolate chip can we make? And then we started, and I called him back, I guess, and said, here's the deal, you know, here's some of the intro pieces. And he came right over and we spent the rest of the next couple of weeks just researching these things. And then 2 weeks later, we started out of his college apartment. So we had absolutely no overhead. We just sprung it up out of nowhere. We bought a cell phone, which we didn't have this. So I should mention this was 1999. So this is a long time ago now. We did not have a cell phone. So we bought one so that people could have a direct line to call us and place their orders. And then we bought the ingredients and we printed out a bunch of flyers at Kinko's and we distribute them all around campus. We were students, so that meant that we could go into any dorm we wanted because nobody knew any different, and we stuck them under all the dorms. We got kicked out of a couple, but mostly we were kind of incognito there. And then we started straight from there, and just as small as you can possibly start.
That's an awesome story. I mean, talk about passion for baking, and then, passion for one another, right? That really have grown into what it is. So that's fabulous. Thank you for sharing. So Janice, let's go over to you. I mean, the mentor method, wow, tell the viewers out there, a little bit about what drove you to tackle this problem and what does the mentor method do?
Sure. So I think there are two key components to how I got to building the mentor method. First off, let me start by saying that I was an accidental entrepreneur. I had studied entrepreneurship from MIT, but that was to help me build a better brand internally as a corporate designer and developer. So I thought that was going to be the extent of my business knowledge, and just sort of kept pursuing a career as a graphic designer in the DC metro area. And then I was taking a disruptive technologies class at Harvard, where our final project was to pick an industry, pick a market, and how would you disrupt it? This aligned actually around this season, where I typically sit down and write thank you emails and thank you notes to mentors and people who have helped me in my career. Given my tech background, I was like, what are people doing now to connect? Because early in my career, when I graduated in 2009, my only mentors were my parents and Marie Claire magazine's, career articles. And that was really it. I really had to work hard to find corporate mentors. So I looked at the market, realized that there was something there, got an A on my final, no surprise, but really felt pulled to build this. And I didn't understand why I was waking up at like 3 a.m, excited to think about business names and look at the market and sort of pursue this as much as I wanted to. So after taking a moment to just sit back and reflect on it, I realized that my path was always leading me to create this because I'm a byproduct of tech and mentorship myself. My parents immigrated from the Congo in the 1970s through college scholarships from missionaries. So for those of you that don't know, the Congo is a third world nation. For them to go from a deficit to just making it in America was a big deal. And so early on, there were 6 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. My dad was working 3 jobs to make ends meet. And he connected with a gentleman at one of the jobs where he was working, who then sponsored him to take computer classes free of charge. Just through this one interaction and this one human connection moment. And then over a 3-year span, my dad went from 3 part-time jobs to getting a security clearance and working in IT at the Pentagon, which changed our lives from, 6 people in a 2-bedroom home and not the best neighborhood in Arlington, Virginia, to 5-bedroom home with a yard in a good school district. So I saw firsthand, and when you're small, you don't really recognize the lessons you're learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I realized that as a living intersection of tech and mentorship, that was always ingrained in me to find ways to keep pushing the ladder down and sideways. And I would do it informally, but I realized that there was a way to leverage my tech background to see that impact at scale, since I knew firsthand what it could do.
What a powerful story to have such an incredible role model, and for you to recognize that and merge those two. And I loved how you talked about it being a path, right? Because at the end of the day, these are all journeys, and what an incredible story to tell. So thank you for sharing. So Abigail, over to you. Which I learned in talking to you, you definitely have a passion for art, which I'm incredibly envious of, because I look at art and I love it, and I feel like I know nothing. But tell us your story and how your passion drove you to create your company.
Yes, absolutely. And so I have been, I'd say, mildly obsessed with candles, the power of scent and art for my whole life. And so when I was in my 20s, I really found myself burning candles every day. And so it passed the so-called toothbrush test of everyday use. So I'd do my morning meditation, maybe with the Headspace app, I'd light a candle. I'd come home after work, plop down on the couch, turn on Netflix, light a candle, and suddenly it's me time. And I felt like, and this will go into a little bit of your next question, but I felt like there wasn't a brand for me. On one end of the spectrum, you had these brands that had really fresh, sophisticated scents that I loved, but they were so expensive that if you could even afford to buy one, you'd be afraid to burn it. And so that was on one end. And on the other end of the spectrum, the more affordable brands had these really sweet, cloying scents, very artificial smelling, that I didn't really connect with either. So it was really recognizing that there was this opportunity in the middle to work with the same master perfumers as the expensive brands, but do it at a much more accessible price point. And then I think the trick for me was bringing in the art component. So I've been a lifelong lover of art. It was something that my mother instilled in me, and really saw this opportunity that with selling scent online, where people, they want to smell a candle before they buy it, that we could use art to tell the story of each scent to create an emotional response from our potential customers that inspires them to buy. So we work with a different artist for each collection, and I can show you in our packaging, this is a key part that changes with every collection, along with the different labels that are created. So we really tell a story with each collection, and it's bringing that art background into the product that really inspired me. So it was seeing that there was an opportunity that brands weren't really selling online, and they weren't bringing in this sort of fresh fragrance perspective. And so that's how Otherland was born.
Oh, that's an awesome story. And you are so right. Scent is one of the most powerful senses we have to create emotion and to anchor feelings, right? And so you definitely captured that. So you hit on something super important around this idea of, hey, how did you disrupt the industry in the white space? And so you, like you said, no one was combining art and storytelling, art and sense. So you saw an incredible opportunity to do this online. Maybe I can jump to Janice, and in telling your story, where did you see kind of the miss? Like, where was the true opportunity that no one was tackling?
People were very focused on mentoring based on demographics. So the four of us would be matched to mentors based on either our age, race, or gender identification, versus us all being very driven, passionate, high performing women. And when you match people based on those external parameters and completely ignore where they want to go in the future, their career goals, what makes them them, what sort of chemistry is required for them to get on with other people, then you're completely missing the mark on mentorship. That's not even mentorship. That's just a waste of time. And so, my theory has always been and remains the same, that in order to build a successful and sustainable mentor relationship, you need to have that chemistry component. You have to want to meet with that person. And those external parameters aren't enough to necessarily get you up and get ready for those meetings. You really want to feel like your mentor or your mentee, that person's invested in your success and they want to see you win. And by being able to foster those relationships through the mentor methods, patent pending technology, we've seen that, and we've been able to disrupt the market and capture a lot of that white space.
It's awesome, because you're so right. It's often built on other demographics or triggers. And, in life in general, one of the most important things you can have is human connection and chemistry with people. So that's amazing. Tiffany, what about you? I mean, your story was phenomenal, and I loved how, it started with baking a set of cookies and you love to bake, but where did you really see that opportunity? Because your company is growing. You've been continually funded and it's exciting.
Yeah, when we started, so it was a different landscape then, right? So this was in the 90s, and for as far as delivery goes, there was pizza and maybe Chinese food, and that was about it. And so I think when we started, there was this huge empty space where nobody's delivering any of this other stuff. And then the fact that the cookies were going to be warm and straight from the oven, that was the niche. And that was the thing that we wanted to capture on. Nobody was doing that. And even today, as many years as we are later, relatively on a wide level are not doing that still, baking to order and delivering them straight out of the oven. It's tricky and it's not super easy to do. There are easier ways to operate a bakery, I think, than the way we do it. But that was always so important to us, those warm cookies. But then I think what happened along the way was we realized we weren't just delivering warm cookies. What we were delivering was warm moments between people. And I think that's what keeps our brand evolving, is that connection that people are finding between each other. When we started, we didn't even consider gifting. A customer asked us, hey, can I send my order to somebody else? And we thought, oh, I don't know, why not? So that's not the way we orchestrated it when we began. We were just thinking of snacking. But customers were telling us, here's how I want to use you. And the more we began to listen to that, the more we began to understand what we were providing to the customer. Yes, a delicious treat, but more than that, it's a way to say, I see you, I'm thinking about you, I'm here for you. And especially right now, this year in particular has been extremely tough for almost everybody. And you'll see that showing through now with those cookie deliveries. There's a lot of isolation going on, and we were able to at least say, here's something warm and comforting. So we do a ton of joyous occasions, and we also do a lot of condolences and things where you need cheering up. So that's what we really found, whereas ultimately the white space was that human connecting moment. So we call them warm cookie moments, and customers tell them to us all the time. We get the coolest stories about how people have used our cookies to connect with somebody else in a really meaningful way.
Oh, that's awesome. And I admit I use them quite a bit. Abigail, tell us.
I just wanted to add something quick. So I felt like, at the beginning of this candle journey, I had done my research. I had talked to my Uber drivers, everyone I knew. I had done SurveyMonkey, everything. I felt this deep conviction that there was this white space. But let me tell you, so many people that I spoke with, particularly men, told me there are a million candle brands out there. We do not need another candle brand. There's nothing here. Keep moving. And I think particularly as women, when we have ideas, we've got to get behind that gut instinct that we feel, where we know that there's something there. And doing your own research and making sure you're taking feedback and advice from people, but pursuing that conviction. This one thing, it more than anything else in the world, and you're the expert. So to trust your gut and to move forward with that.
Oh, that's awesome. That is great advice. And I know everyone out there watching, that's what they want from today, right? They want to understand the secrets and the advice. So I'm going to switch gears a little. We've talked about your businesses, but now we want to talk really about the human aspect and the people aspect of your businesses, because it's so important, especially as entrepreneurs. And so, you alluded to it, Tiffany. 2020 is almost over, and I think we're all so looking forward to that, because this year has brought so much change. It really helped us build our resiliency muscle, and each and every one of us was completely thrown into new worlds of remote work, virtual learning, social distancing. Literally, there isn't an aspect of our life that hasn't been touched. And we know this has psychological impacts on all of us. Even at Dell, we had to move 167,000 team members to work from home in just a matter of 2 weeks. And transition and transformation is massive. And we know that technology has played a big piece in that. You hear Janice talk about the role that it plays. But what we fundamentally believe that it's really ushered in this new era of almost human transformation. And so the questions I want to ask now is, given this last year, it's kind of a twofold question. What role did your team members play in really solidifying and maintaining your brand? And then secondly, did you change the way you engaged with your customers or your team members, just given this crazy year? And why don't we go, Abigail? We'll start with you.
Sure. So definitely it's been a wild year. And one thing for us as a brand, because we started selling direct to consumer. So now we're also at Nordstrom and Sephora as of last week, but we started direct to consumer. So really building that direct connection, and in particular on Instagram and our social following. We knew that was going to be important. Our first hire was someone to do social. And that is where we are so focused every day in creating those connections. And so we have something, it's a shared album with our team internally called Customer Love. And we literally are screenshotting like almost every post we get about the product. And we all talk about that every morning. We also take different turns doing customer service on social, but that is where you see the stories of how joyful it is to do the unboxing, or how someone has fallen in love with the scent or a gift. Particularly in the last 6 months, we're seeing so many gifts of someone sending a sweet bit of sunshine to a family member or colleague or someone who's far away. And so really having that connection, getting excited with the customer about their purchase and receiving it. We also get feedback too. We've made a lot of product changes based on what we've seen on Instagram. So for instance, we realized that when people received the candle, that they couldn't remember what the scent notes were that were on the website when they made their purchase. So we started adding the scent notes to the lid, so that as soon as you open the box, you could see right there, rose, peony, pear water, and you could have that there and remember that connection. So I think that in particular, social has been just this great place for those human connections, learning about our customers, their stories, what makes them happy, what's creating joy. And our whole team has really rallied around that this year.
Yeah, I think that's a reoccurring theme, probably with a number of companies, right? The rise of social and the importance of engagement and the joy it brings, and sometimes also the challenges it brings. So awesome, Abigail. Tiffany, what about you? I mean, you have stores. You had to deal with a lot of challenges this last year, and like you said, continuing to deliver warm moments when people needed it most. So what did you learn about engaging with your customers and team members this last year, and what had changed, if anything?
Yeah, it has been a crazy year for anybody who's in retail of any sort. Changing overnight is a requirement. So if you look back to March, things were just crazy, and we had to, on a dime, change it to totally interaction-free delivery. How do you do that? How do you make sure the customer is getting their fresh items? Safety seals. We need, the face masks. We needed face masks when they didn't have face masks. So we were looking around, how do we source these when nobody's making these? If you rewind back so long ago when those things weren't commonplace. So a lot of fast moving parts. I have to hand it to our team. We have an unbelievable team that was able to get together, get all the things we needed. We were making changes overnight. We were making so many changes. We would put up a new poster of policies almost every day. Not almost every day. We were putting something new. And so our team members accepting all that new information coming through. It was a challenging, very challenging time. And for customers as well, if you look at all the uncertainty that is still going on, but especially back in March, I think one of the first things we did was in interacting with our customers was we knew we needed to send out a letter. So everyone was sending out letters and saying, here's our new sanitation protocols, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And we sat and we thought on it for a little while, and we thought, I don't think that that's really what our customers need to hear. I think they know that we're going to do that, or at least they trust us well enough to know we will be doing those kind of things. And instead, we just sent out a letter just straight from me and Leon, not necessarily from the company, but from us, just being vulnerable and saying, we don't know what's happening either, but we are seeing positive things. So we were able to deliver so many warm moments. We had the opportunity to really be there for our customers. And that was something we talked a lot with our team about too, because it was a tough time. It was a tough time for everybody personally. It was a scary time for everybody to be doing anything. And it really kept our team going, knowing this is important for our customers. They need us now more than they've ever needed us. They can't see their loved ones. Think of the people that are sending to their grandparents in nursing homes. You cannot see them. People were celebrating birthdays that were going by. Sweet 16s were going by. Eventually graduation went by. Mother's Day went by. Nobody could see anybody during all of this time. And so it was really inspiring for us to be the conduit for people to have these moments together, even when they couldn't. And I think we were pretty transparent in our initial message, just saying, we know this is a terrible time. We're scared too. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know there's goodness in the world because we're seeing it. So we get to see that even when things feel really crappy. We still get to see all that love that's coming through between people. And so we're in a unique position to see that. So it's been kind of a wild year, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but we get to see some really sweet stuff.
It sure has. And I think you hit on something so important that probably every human being and every company and every brand realized, is that the importance of authenticity. And, like I said, we believe that there's just a kinder, gentler communication connection that will come out of this, because like you said, you have to be vulnerable as a leader. And I found myself even sending emails to my team members all on mental wellness and mental health, and getting off a Zoom on certain things I've never ever had to communicate in my career. And those were the most important things I was talking about. So that's really inspiring. Janice, what about you? I mean, tell us how, this rapid transformation, because you have a tech platform, right? And
Correct.
that became, technology was a topic in these last couple of years or couple months. So, tell us how your world transformed.
Our world has transformed in terms of the magnitude of our pipeline, which has been wonderful for business. There is still some of that survivor's guilt. We've seen the numbers on how this has impacted women, people of color, and small business owners. But we're grateful that, our fight in seeing more equitable workplaces has actually increased, especially as we see people shifting to this work from home environment. We're honored and humbled to play a part in that, because despite, being holed up in your apartment as I am now, and as, we're all in our homes at the moment, we still want to connect. We want to feel heard, we want to feel respected, we want to feel valued, and we want that security. And so if you're in front of Zoom, 10 hours a day, like I was yesterday, or, just connecting with people over laptops and technology, it's still good to know that there's a tool that will help you find people who genuinely have your back at your place of work, not just because you're in the same cubicle section or because you're have this number of followers or connected to these people, but really because there's that ethos alignment that is palpable and hard to replicate. So, one of the cornerstones of the mentor method has always been treat everyone, whether that is the executive assistant or the overworked program manager that's doing the scope of work document, procurement to get us paid, or the actual executive making the decisions. Everybody should be treated as assets and not checkboxes. The same way we expect our customers to treat the diverse employees that they're mentoring through the Mentor Method software. I will say that I think it can be easy to just focus on the numbers, right? And think about your sales funnel and almost forget about the global pandemic, or maybe feel as though you're experiencing this global pandemic and this wild year, but perhaps your customers aren't. So a big thing that we've done is just adding in time for compassion, right? Like we know if you're setting up a meeting and there's a clear agenda, you will get to those agenda items. It doesn't hurt to take 5 minutes and just ask and genuinely want to know how someone is doing. See if they're having a long week. Send that overworked program manager Tiff's treats and a dozen flowers, to let them know that there is something more, and that's, that we're grateful for the opportunity to work with them. So it hasn't changed a lot for us, but I think for those that are very focused on like the sales and growth side of the house, making sure that we are elevating the level of compassion that we're bringing before getting down to business. And that's actually been a great value add for us.
I love that you time for compassion. And I will say, Tiffany, I sent more Tiff's treats in this last month than I think I've sent my whole career. And it's important, right? That connection is important because I think as leaders and as entrepreneurs and you guys are, your businesses are on the line every day, that human connection and that human leadership has never been more important. And I often talk about, I actually think this made me a better leader, right? Because I had to care about things that you kind of take for granted. So that's just awesome, Janice. So you talked about impact and the pandemic and the impact on it. And this next stat that I'm going to share with you is a really hard stat to talk about because we know women more than men have actually are increasingly infected by the impacts of this year. And in fact, approximately 865,000 women left the workforce in September alone. And that's 4 times more women than men that stopped working. And I know this is something that really we work on and focus on and talk a lot and have a lot of programs at Dell making sure our women feel supported. We have a huge goal out there that by 2030, we want 50% of our global workforce to be women and 40% of them to be people leaders. We're only about 2/3 of the way there. And so we still have work to do, but I can tell you it is a top priority. But as female founders, I really would love to hear your take around this critical issue because we know women are facing more obstacles today. They're juggling work and life, and in some cases, uncertain business landscapes, in some cases, thriving business landscapes. So, Janice, why don't we start with you? What advice can you share for women looking to build a business right now?
Well, first, right, leading with compassion. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help. I've had my business for 4.5 years now. So if you're just starting out, please find a way to get in contact with me, and I'm happy to do anything I can to support. In terms of leveraging this moment to make it a positive versus what it can be seen as, I think it's important to lean on and leverage the institutional knowledge of other women. I'm very humbled by the network of women that I have around me, building me up, giving me the critical feedback that I need in order to be successful, opening their networks and their hearts and their arms when necessary as I have been growing the mentor method. And I think it's important to find those people because I can't even imagine starting the mentor method now in the middle of a global pandemic. I would not have been able to grow the way that we have been without those mentors and those friends and people in the trenches. So I think it's important to find those resources as soon as possible. I also think it's important to learn from those who are in a similar space. When I first started the mentor method, yes, of course, I had mentors that were light years ahead of where the business was, and they were very helpful in giving me a clear path on how I could achieve the same level of success. But those peer mentors, I learned so much from my fellow founders that were in their first, 6 months to a year of building their business because they have those growth hacks, right? I mean, at that point, all you really have is time and ambition. So you really learn how to make what you've got work for you and to make it bigger and scale faster with limited resources. So I would say try to learn from others as much as you can. Give yourself some credit. Like I said, your body recognizes that there's a global trauma taking place. Building a business is traumatic enough without a global pandemic. It is hard, right? I mean, we're all nodding because like we've done it, but it is hard. So cut yourself some slack. Maybe don't read the Vox or Fortune article about, the mythological unicorn founder who, was living off of ramen, blinked, and then was making $4 million overnight. Like, give yourself some room and some compassion.
Yeah.
And lastly, despite what's going on, I would love to see women business owners and professional women in general make sure that they're making decisions that are strategic and will help them long term. I think it can be easy to take the deal that's just given to you because like you need the money now, right? I understand that. I've been there, but I think it's important to think about short-term value, but then also that lifetime value of every decision you make, because when we're out of this pandemic and when your business is successful and flourishing and you're on another panel for, the next Kendra Scott Summit, you want to feel proud of the decisions you made. And the best way to do that is really to think strategically about the direction and make decisions based from that.
I love it. I love it. Give yourself some grace and think long term, right? That's awesome. Abigail, what about you? What advice would you give to a female founder right now following their passions to build their business?
Absolutely. So there's so much uncertainty right now. And one thing that I think has been really interesting that it has bred sort of an environment for is experimentation and taking a risk, trying something new. And I think that can apply to, getting your feet wet. Other than started, I learned how to make candles in my kitchen. I bought all sorts of supplies, and I was in business school at the time. I ended up selling them to different classmates, but starting just trying it as it can be a side hustle. And I think research has even shown that starting something as a side hustle, working with what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product. What is the most basic, incarnation of your product to bring to market, so you can start to get some feedback, some data, and start iterating and developing on your product. That keeping something as a side hustle for as long as possible as the business is growing, that has been shown to help in the long-term success. And so, the world is changing now, and you can take that step and sort of tap into that alchemy of things changing and try and experiment. And one thing I would say that I saw on our side was, and I'll talk about this a little more in our next question, but I have been sort of personally I've lacked some confidence in terms of social media, putting myself out there, working on my Instagram content. And at the beginning of the pandemic, my co-founder, who's my boyfriend, he said, "I dare you to tell everyone that you're going to go on Instagram Live." And so I started doing Instagram Live. We call it Fireside Chats. So I started doing it a few days a week, and then it became 5 days a week. And we started reaching out. I figured, I'm going to ask some of my female founder role models, people like Ariana Huffington or Bea Dixon, Sophia Amoruso, Rebecca Minkoff, and even people like Haley Duff and Lo Bosworth. I'm going to reach out and see if they'll come on my program. And through that, which is something, I never would have thought I'd ever go live on Instagram. I've really, I think, grown a lot. It's enlarged our community, but using this opportunity to take the risk, do the experimentation, put yourself out there and see what happens.
I love it. I love it. There's a reoccurring theme. There's a lot of reoccurring themes, but that vulnerability, right? And to not be scared. And what I also heard is someone there encouraging you to do that. So that's awesome.
We're all scared.
Yeah. So Tiffany, what about you? What advice would you have right now to women trying to build their business?
I think one thing that Janice kind of alluded to that we can take advantage of right now is there actually is a little more grace right now for your personal life that's going on. I'll say yesterday, we had a board meeting yesterday, and I had a personal childcare situation that sprung up that meant it's possible that I was going to be trying to Zoom that board meeting, but also do virtual school at the same time. But I knew because of where we are as a society, it would have been okay. Everybody would have said, yeah, I know why that is. And maybe a year ago, something like that, maybe not so okay. It's like, make it work, right? But, and even though we're going to juggle things and make things work, if you've got I know right now, if one of my kids walks through the background of this, no one's gonna be frowning about that. They know, like, that's just the way it goes. So there is a little bit of that going on right now that you could take advantage of. But one thing I think I would say, and this is the same advice I would give at any time, which is, for me, I think you can only be as successful as you want to be if you pick what you want to focus on. And I think you can do many things at once, but I don't think you can have equal focus on everything and expect it all to be amazing. So I know when we started the business, we were very lucky because we were extremely young and we didn't have any children. And we were so dumb that anything was possible, which is great. But we put everything into it. We worked day and night, nothing else, no friends, no social life, no money, nothing. It was just the business. And it really worked for us because it meant we were putting every last thing into it. And that's not a reasonable expectation for many people. We do have families, we do have other responsibilities. But I do think you have to pick and choose the right time. Is it the right time for me? Can I devote the amount of focus that's going to make it successful? If I can't, or if I don't want to, then maybe it's not exactly the right time. Maybe this waits, or maybe that waits. And I think you can do multiple things, and you can do many things. In fact, you can do everything, but perhaps not perfectly and all at the same time. So I do think there's a little bit of picking and choosing and sacrificing. Which one do I want to do? Am I all in on this? Then this should be one of my main priorities.
Yeah, I love it. Focus is huge, right? And it's probably one of the reasons you are incredibly successful. So that's great advice. All right, I can't believe this, but we are literally almost out of time. It feels like it has gone so fast, and I could talk to you ladies, and I know everyone out there would love to listen for hours longer, but we actually do need to wrap it up. So look, one final question, and I know everyone out there wants to hear, like all entrepreneurs, it has not always been easy, and you've learned some hard lessons. So what's that one piece of advice you would tell your younger self that the entrepreneurs out there who want to start a business could learn from? So Tiffany, we'll start with you.
So mine's probably more personal to my personality, but maybe other people share the same thing. I think if I look back on my young self, I would tell me, relax, know that it's going to work out, and have fun with it along the way, because you know you're going to take that next step, and you know that next step is scary, but it's going to happen anyway. So you may as well just get ready and get used to saying yes to opportunities and have fun as you're doing it. And I still struggle with that even now. So even now we get all these new opportunities coming in, and I'm like, can I do it? Can we do it? Are we ready to do that next step? But guess what happens? We do it. We do all of that stuff. All that next step happens. But in the meantime, I've spent my whole time worked up and worried, can I do it? And I think, if I could go back and say, just relax, you're going to do it. You can do this. You've got people around you that can help you do this. You will do this. It's going to happen. And just say yes and move forward and take that next step. And maybe you can even move a little faster. You can do more. I guess my ultimate thing is you can do more than you think you can do.
Oh, that's great advice to your young self. I love it. I love it. Janice, what about you?
I love that you can do more than you think you can. Yeah, thinking back to myself in my 20s, I would tell myself the things that make you different are also going to be your superpowers for how you grow the business. Being a woman and a Black woman in the tech entrepreneurial space, you will be discredited several times. Let your resilience be your guide, trust your gut, and don't let anybody talk to you the way you wouldn't want them to talk to your best friend. You have to be your best and first advocate. And I would also tell my younger self to focus more on that mental well-being, get into the grind, be all encompassed by your business, feel that passion, but also make sure that you're taking time to just continue maintaining overall well-being, because burnout is one heck of a ride. I'm sure we can all relate.
Yeah.
So finding ways to mitigate that early on, I would also say that, and just keep going. It's going to be fine. Breathe. It's going to be great.
That's awesome, Janice. And there's one thing that I think if you look back at everything you've talked about today, you have such an incredible grasp on self-care and awareness and that balance. And that's so, so important. So really, really great sharing. And I think as women in general, whether we're women entrepreneurs or you're a leader in a company or you're just working, we tend to be much harder on ourselves. And we strive for that perfection. And I think continuing to even have people around us to remind us that we're human is super important. So Abigail, as we close it out, what's your kind of one piece of advice you would have told your younger self?
Okay, so I couldn't pick one. I've got two short ones, but I promise they're worth it. So one would be believe in your own true, authentic perspective. What makes you, you, and your view on things. That is so important. And especially just starting a business, you may not have, you may not have full, you believe in it, but you may not have full confidence around all of these little consumer decisions and so forth. You hear a lot of opinions, you want to sort of go where the data goes, but you've got to be true to your perspective. And I think it was only when I learned that some of the most successful fragrances are actually the most polarizing ones that I started to sort of feel the confidence that I love this scent. I'm going to push forward with it, even though it may not be everyone's favorite or our artwork. It's bold. It's not for everyone, but that's what makes us unique. So being true to your perspective and your authentic self is so important. And then the other one, very quickly, I really wish I had done this earlier, especially if you have a consumer brand, is to start building your platform on social media. It is so important these days, and people want to connect with people, not just with a brand, but being the face, putting yourself out there, sharing your story. It doesn't need to look perfect. Like, nobody expects it to look perfect. It's authentic, your authentic self. So get out there and try to get comfortable with putting yourself out to connect with people.
Yeah, you're so right. That's awesome advice. And today's consumer can see through the inauthenticity like that, and it can make or break your business very quickly. Well, believe it or not, we are out of time. Tiffany, Abigail, and Janice, you guys have been amazing. I hope everyone out there has had as much fun as we have. I'm certainly inspired and honored to have shared the stage with all of you. Thank you so much, and please enjoy the rest of the Kendra Scott Well Institute Summit. Thank you guys very much.
Around the world, women are connecting and evolving their businesses through the Dell Women's Entrepreneur Network. Celebrate your journey and navigate success with a global community of entrepreneurs and mentors who are sharing their inspiring stories at our live events and virtual webinars. Whether you own a startup or a scale-up, we know that doing more takes the right tools too. As a Dwen member, you'll have access to funding resources and tailored tech to keep you moving forward. It's your moment to own it. Join at dwen.com today.